Hey guys, Brian here from Better Chess Training, and I have an instructive video here of Paul Morphy, great 19th century chess legend, beating up on his uncle. And so check that out. Okay, this game is Paul Morphy with the white pieces against, I believe, his uncle, Ernest Morphy, who had the black pieces, and this is in Morphy's hometown of New Orleans in 1856, and it was a casual game, and I guess Paul Morphy played a lot of games against his relatives. So uh, most of the time, he starts out with e4 and e5 and knight f3 and knight c6. And here Morphy plays bishop to c4, the Italian game. His opponent responds bishop to c5, and here black plays b4. So this is the Evans gambit, and what the general idea is that white's going to give up this b pawn in order to deflect the black bishop and to build a strong pawn center. And this is right up Paul Morphy's alley because a lot of his game was about um, the development and the initiative rather than just material. So this opening fits him very well. And if we were to look this up in the database, I'm going to assume, partly because this opening was a little more popular at this time, that he played quite a few games here. But let's see what happens. Bishop takes b4 is the standard response, and then c3, which of course attacks the bishop, but also supports the coming d4 here. Bishop to a5, one of the standard responses, and then d4. And here black takes. Just as a side note, more recently, mainline would be something like d6, declining to take here, because this gives white a lot of initiative and a strong center. And then after queen to b3, queen to d7, defending the f7 pawn, d takes e5, black gives back the pawn with bishop to b6 with a solid position for white. Okay, but in the game, Ernest Morphy played e takes d4, white castles, and then black gets a little greedy, and this is a mistake here. He takes the pawn here on c3 with his bishop. Um, Go back, what he could have done, or what maybe he should have done, was continued his development with something like knight to f6 or knight g to e7 so he can get castled. And we'll see that this causes a little bit of trouble here. Okay, let's go back to the game. After bishop takes c3, knight takes c3, d takes c3, and now bishop to a3. And we see that this bishop is going to prevent black from castling kingside. Okay, d6 blocking the bishop, and then queen to b3 attacking this f7 pawn. Okay, that forces the knight here to h6. Definitely not the ideal spot. Queen takes c3, recovering the pawn and targeting g7 here. And then black tries to offer a trade of queens here with queen to f6. Now, we've had a couple games, I think, of Paul Morphy's here on the channel. What do you think Morphy did? If you want, take a quick look at this position. Take 30 seconds and let me know what you think white played. Well, if you thought that Morphy did not trade queens, you would be correct. And the move he played here is a great one, and it's e5, which targets, of course, it is attacking the queen, but also is looking to open up some files into center, especially with the opponent's king in the middle. This is definitely a great idea. Well, he takes e5. Now, rook f to e1, again, targeting this weak spot. So this is very instructive for our own games. When your opponent has a pawn or some type of weakness, we want to pile on as much firepower as possible. You can see here that Morphy is doing that. Okay, bishop to d7. Remember, at this point, Morphy is up a couple pawns, or I'm sorry, Ernest Morphy is up a couple pawns, so he doesn't mind giving one back to get out of trouble. And so here he's playing bishop to d7. Of course, the idea now is to castle queenside. Now, with that in mind, what do you think White played next? The clue is White's going to castle queenside, and are there any targets to focus on? Well, here Morphy plays another good move, rook a to b1. Now, mind you, this game was played in 1856, and if you were to run this game through a chess engine, you would find that surprisingly that most of Paul Morphy's moves are the number one choice or one of the top choices. Definitely, most of the time he played very correct chess, which is the reason why we want to study him. Also, in these double king pawn openings, he was a great. Um, at the time, of course, that was most popular responses to e4 was to e5, but Morphy was definitely a master of these types of positions. So, especially for beginners who play a lot of e4 and respond with a lot of e5, these are games. Morphy's games, both from the white and the black side, are good to study, and maybe we'll put more on the channel. But anyways, getting back to the game, Ernest Morphy castled queenside. Probably still the best thing to do, even though we see the firepower is uh, gathering over there. Let me just go back um, real quick here. After bishop to d7, if white were to just pick up one of these pawns, black would just castle. And now we can see that the position is quite different because um, now black is able to consolidate. He's going to be able to um, solidify. And remember, he is up material. Okay, so a little bit different position here, which is why Morphy played as he did. Okay, let's go back to the game position after rook a to b1 and castles. Bishop to a6. This was definitely very brilliant. And of course, as you know, this is Paul Morphy's uncle that is playing him. So he knows already of his nephew's attacking prowess. So very afraid to take this bishop. In fact, bishop to a6 is the best move in the position, at least according to the engine analysis that I did and trying to find any other moves. But Ernest Morphy missed an opportunity to equalize here. I could see you could see why though. Uh, Needed to take this bishop on a6, and let's take a look here. This shows you how to attack this position. Of course, he was fearing queen to b3 with this threat of queen to b7, which would be checkmate. However, bishop to g4, opening this d7 square, is was the correct move. And after queen to b7 check, again, this all looks very scary if you were to play this over the board as black. King to d7, then knight takes e5 check. Okay, after the knight takes, queen to d5 check. And here we see what the problem is that, well, we can't block this check with the queen because white will just take with his bishop. And if the king goes over to the e file, for example, king to e8, then rook takes e5 check is very powerful and will lead to checkmate. However, go back here to queen d5 check. Black can simply play king to c8. And there really is no way for white to progress. And so his best move would just be to repeat with queen to b7 check or queen to a8 check. But surprisingly, black would be able to hold on. And from a logical standpoint, now I analyzed this with the help of an engine so that help me come to that conclusion. But if you look at it, black is just up a lot of material. He's up a couple pieces as well as a few pawns. And so white has to play very forcing moves. And unfortunately, he doesn't have enough in order to. He doesn't have enough firepower. I'm sorry, white doesn't have enough firepower to follow through with this. So in any case, of course, we can understand that Ernest Morphy would be afraid of taking this bishop on a6 because of these threats. But uh, we can see here that it would have been an even position, at least a drawn position. But it is, again, very scary to take this bishop, especially against someone like Paul Morphy. So instead, he played knight to a5, trying to defend this pawn. And white just brings in reinforcements. Rook e to c1, now threatening mate on c7. Bishop to c6, blocking that. And now the queen just takes the knight on a5. Okay, bishop takes a6, queen takes a6 check, and then king to d7. And here's another good move. Actually, there's a few good moves you can play here. Playing over this game with one of my students, he said knight to e5 check. Of course, this is very good because of queen takes c6 and queen takes c6 check. And of course, that would be checkmate. But instead, rook takes c6 works fine as well. And of course, here if queen takes c6, then knight takes e5 check will do the job. Okay, after rook takes c6, queen to f5. Of course, just getting out of the attacking range here. Rook takes c7 check. Very nice. And of course, if king takes, then we have checkmate here. So king to e8. Here, Morphy just continued on with the attack. These last few moves are pretty straightforward. Queen to c6 check. Queen to d7. After queen to d7, of course, white can take on d7, but of course, Morphy plays a very elegant move here. Rook to b8. Of course, the idea here is that rook takes b8, queen takes d7 is mate. So instead, queen takes c6, rook to e7 check, forces the king to f8. Then we have mate in 2 here with rook takes d8 check, queen to e8, and game was finished with rook d takes e8. That is checkmate. So a very nice game by Paul Morphy, beating up on his uncle. Hey guys, hope you enjoyed that game. Paul Morphy is one of my favorite players. I also think he's very instructive for, especially for beginning and intermediate players. You can learn a lot about developing your pieces, controlling the center, as well as opening lines for attack. And with those three things combined, he was able to win a lot of beautiful games. So I definitely recommend you check out Paul Morphy's games. I have a video here for perhaps his most famous game, his opera game, so check that out. I also have a link down below to a book I'm studying by Grandmaster Zenon Franco about Paul Morphy and very nice annotations and instructive analysis of his game. So check that out below, check this video, and I'll see you next time.